Before we work the actual example here, I just want to talk a little bit about how we can label our horizontal scale. In this problem, they want us to use the class midpoints. So I'm not drawing this histogram yet, I'm just drawing a little fake histogram here. If we wanted to label with class midpoints, when we label, we're going to label those values in the center. And for example, here our class midpoint for 60 to 69 is 64.5. So we would label that in the center. And labeling it in the center shows us that we are using the class midpoint. Now, there's another way to label. We could label these by using lower class limits. In that case, we would use 60, 70, 80, and 90. And so if we were going to do that, we would label on the left hand side 60, 70, 80, and then of course we could have another one here that was 90. And again, this is not the example that we're going to do. This is just an example of how we could label. And there is one more way that we could label this. We could label using the class boundaries. Class boundaries, remember, are those values that are at the beginning and the end of each class. And we find those class boundaries by taking a upper class limit and a lower class limit, adding them together and dividing by 2, so that would be 69.5. And then 79 and 80 added together divided by 2 would be 79.5. We can follow that pattern to get 89.5 and 99.5. Then on the other side, it would be 59.5. And again, that's just following the pattern. What's lower than 60? Class boundary wise, 59.5. And then our next one would be 69.5, 79.5. 89.5. Okay, so labeling those, we would label lower class boundary 59.5. The next one would be 69.5, and then 79.5, and then 89.5, ending with an upper class boundary on that last one of 99.5. Notice there were 4 classes, but 5 class boundaries. 5 total class boundaries. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with class boundaries. Now, let's do the actual example that's on the screen. And still erasing everything we just talked about. Alright. Use the given frequency distribution to construct a histogram. Use class midpoints for the horizontal scale. So, let's figure out what are those class midpoints. To find the class midpoint, remember we're going to take the 2 values in the class, we're going to add them together and divide by 2. So that's 64.5. And there's going to be a pattern to that. So our class midpoints are going to be 64.5, 74.5, 84.5, and 94.5. And we'll label the class midpoints in the center of the bar, of each bar for each frequency. So 60 to 69 had a frequency of 5. So we go up to 5, and I'm going to make my bars pretty wide. Label in the center 64.5. This is not going to be perfect since I'm doing this by hand, but it will give you an idea of how to draw a histogram. For the 70 to 79 class, we had 3. Remember, our bars touch. I'm trying to make them the same width, but they're going to vary a little bit. So 74.5 for that class midpoint, and then up to 7. $84.5. This is the 80 to 89 class. and then up to 8 for the 90 to 99 class. Label that class midpoint, 94.5, and there we have the histogram for the frequency distribution on the right top corner of the page.